among them than almost the entire police department. And so once again, it's unfortunate that the review came after the officer was killed, because part of me hopes that if we had done all that, maybe disbanded the unit, you would still be with us today. So all the issues that are coming up for Tyree Nichols are very near and dear to my heart, which is why I wanted to have this discussion tonight about how do we heal, how do we go forward. So after we hear from the CIT team, we're gonna break into small groups. And we're gonna have officers in those groups, we're gonna have community members in those groups, and we're gonna talk about how we're feeling about these, but we're gonna end on a high note about what can we do as officers and the community to make sure that we are moving Dallas forward. And so I'm encouraging you to stay out and hang the whole time. So we're going to bring up the CIT team, Nakisha Harrell and her team, and then after they give us the presentation and the techniques on how to deal with this, we're going to put these chairs in some circles, we're going to have some facilitators, and we're going to talk. And the groups are going to be small, so I'm hoping people feel courageous enough to say what you feel like you need to say, and then we're going to come back and hear a report out from the groups about the ideas you all came up with to help move the police department and the community forward. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
And then part two, like I said, is the one where you'll get to ask officials and other leaders all kind of policy questions, but tonight's not about that. All right? So with that, help me welcome Nakisha Harrell and the CIT team that's gonna talk to us about secondary trauma and then give us some ways to deal with that. So let's welcome her and her team.
Hi, how are y'all doing? So we are with the Office of Integrated Public Safety Solutions, and in that department, there are several different programs. There's a violence interrupter program, there's Right Here, crime prevention unit, and then there's a crisis intervention team. So we are the crisis intervention team. There's a lot more of us. We have community liaisons, and we have 2 mobile crisis coordinators per substation. So there's 7 substations, so that's about 14. And then we have 2 housed at City Hall. We are incorporating another shift, a later shift, because we work alongside Right Here. So we work directly with DPD and directly with DFR. Right now, what we're doing is we're providing social service referrals and mental health referrals for individuals in need. So if it's not an emergent situation where they're at threat of harming themselves or someone else, then we would show up and assist. We're currently launching a pilot program out of North Central Substation and Southeast Substation, where we are responding to 911 calls alongside DPD. So what normally happens is if they get a call and Right Here has to go out first, let's say the individual is not at threat of hurting themselves or anyone else, then they would call us to come out and we would assist the individual if they needed perhaps to be connected to a psychiatrist, or maybe they need some type of social service need, we would be there. This allows the officers to get off of the call and be able to close out their part, and we can stay and talk for however long that takes. Sometimes when we go out to assist, it does become emergent, so we are there to assist Right Here. So if Right Here is not available, we will be the ones doing the lethality assessment to determine if that person needs to go to a behavioral health setting. So we're just out here trying to bridge the gap with the community and helping those in need. We hope eventually when people call 911, they're saying police, fire, or mental health. That way they know when they're going to that call, this individual needs mental health, instead of taking a person with mental health illness or, severe mental health to the jail. You know, we want them to get the help that they need.
I want to talk about some coping skills that you can use. Like self-care is very important. In order to take care of yourself, you have to have some skills available. You can use exercising, deep breathing, you could dancing, listening to music, and especially deep breathing is very important. It relaxes you and calms you down.
And I think those are beneficial, especially if you are experiencing secondary trauma. We also call it compassion fatigue. A lot of social service professionals, law enforcement, anybody who's working with people directly, we will experience compassion fatigue, where what happens is you're empathetic to the situation. So let's say, for example, you hear about something, maybe a child is murdered and you're a parent. So you're gonna have empathy towards that situation. So a lot of times in this profession, working alongside police officers, we see these things amongst each other, and you can kind of see it on a call if someone is not feeling comfortable. And I like the fact that we're there with them because we can kind of like take over. If we kind of see it's gonna, maybe they're not able to handle it, or one of us is not able to handle it, because even though we are social workers, it doesn't mean we are always equipped to handle situations like that, because we're human. And like Barbara discussed, you know, having different coping skills will help. And I think when we're working directly with the community and we encounter individuals who may have issues with police, when they understand that we work with them and we're civilians, and we're like saying, you know, sometimes it may look this way, but it's not always the case, and we can't put everybody in the same category just because of these incidents, you know? So we're trying our best just to get out there just like everyone else and just make sure that we're doing our part to, you know, assist our public servants.
I know Tanya asked a great question of how something in other cities affects us here. You know, why am I impacted because it happened there? Because I've heard a lot of other people going, I never met the individual, but I'm still having this reaction to it. And, you know, that reaction comes also out of fear. You know, am I next? What else can occur? You know, when we were talking, you know, I made a conscious decision to not watch that video. And those were one of those things to not so much avoid the secondary trauma, but it was, what benefit am I going to receive from that? You know, I encouraged a number of the people in my family and friends who are moms to truly avoid watching that, because again, the impact, the man was calling, I've heard what occurred, I chose not to watch it. The man's calling out for his mom. And of course, a mother, you know, it also talks about the gender differences in that secondary trauma. You know, a woman hearing a young man call out for his mother while he's enduring this is obviously going to have an emotional attachment to that. When we talk about the coping skills, again, it's not to shield myself from seeing or knowing what occurred. It's to ensure I don't need to see the entire process of that. You know, I saw what happened to George Floyd. That doesn't mean I needed to watch it every single time it came on the news. You know, I made the decision to change that channel. You know, and working with police officers that I know, and we see them every day at City Hall, some of the trauma they're dealing with is, because this happened, I now have to be, I'm already held to a standard. Now this occurred, I have to do it one step farther. And I'm walking into situations where there's already an issue. You know, people don't react well to uniforms a lot of times, and that's what we also talk about. We're going out in our khakis and our shirts and DFR.
They're changing our uniforms, so if you don't see us in khakis and shirts, it's a little bit more different. We went to the same quartermaster now, so we're gonna have a little bit more of a different uniform because they're in the field. So, but it does say crisis intervention on our shirts if you see us, so. You'll know it's us.
So, again, to me, self-care, ensuring that I don't put myself in those places and know how to address it when that is going on. Being able to talk openly and honestly with people about what I'm feeling, you know, and ask people to be able to express themselves as well, and acknowledge that it occurred. So.
Just talking about it helps a lot. Talk to a loved one, a family member, a coworker. You never know what people are going through and how they can help each other.
And I think for me, my secondary trauma, and I can personalize this a little bit, I didn't always look like this. So in the past, the secondary trauma that I am currently experiencing is conducting myself professionally, but also experiencing the feelings that are related to what happened. So a lot of times when I come in contact with African-American men or men, period, right, and they have issues with the police, one of my functions or core functions is to make sure that I stay calm, right? Because when you have secondary trauma, one of the things that we talk about when you're breathing is to stay calm. So there's another terminology that goes with secondary trauma. It's called cicatric, right? And cicatric is like when you have this scar, right? You've been injured, you have a scar, right? But the scar is healed, but the scar is just a reminder of the trauma. So a lot of times what people are experiencing is the remembrance of the trauma. So I sometimes have to breathe, relax, and then respond, right? And that's the same coping skills that we teach people when we run into them in the public. Like we had a call today, right? An African-American man in the post office. He was just in the post office with no shoes, homeless, right? Everybody was scared, right? But thank God that he was really like seeking help, right? That he didn't have that issue with the police, right? And when we came, when Brendan and I came, right, and my other coworker had addressed it first, we were able to talk to him, right, and get him the necessary help that he needs, right? We was able to take him to Metro Care, right? We're talking about bridging the gap. We're talking about helping the community, and that's the role of CIT, is to help those who are in crisis to get the necessary services that they need so that they can begin to function as citizens of Dallas, right? Because we see a lot of people panhandling. Y'all see people panhandling all the time, right? And one of the things that we do, right, is just talk to them. Treat them like humans, because that's what they are, right? That's somebody's son, that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's mother. So we, as CIT, we go out and we make sure that we help DPD with being a representation of what the city would have us to do, and that's to help others. So we was able to get the guy help. We was able to get him shelter because he had been out in the cold for days, right? He was desperate, right? And so we run into people sometimes who are desperate, right? And they're capable of.
First, I want to say I'm glad I'm going before Councilman Thomas instead of Alfred, because he's an orator, I'm not. So, again, thank you all for being here. This is something that I thought that the Oversight Board and the Office of Community Oversight were uniquely positioned for. When we were dealing with the pain and secondary trauma of Mr. George Floyd's death, we were in the midst of a pandemic. We did not have the ability to open up the city or to do any of these things to allow people to come in a safe space and express themselves and learn techniques for healing. We also didn't have it for Botham Jean and for a number of other young men and women who died unjustly at the hands of police officers. So tonight is very special because of the fact that I am finally seeing the office and the board doing something that I truly believe will be helpful for the community. But not only that, when you are expressing yourselves and going through the process of trying to find healing, I want you to think about the officers in the room as well, because of the fact that they're hurting too. If you're a good police officer and you wake up that morning, you see the video and you hear about another young man dying and in such a brutal manner as Tyre Nichols, it has to be hard to put that shield on. It has to be hard to put that uniform on and go to work. So tonight, let's all look at the humanity in each other. And let's let that be the bridge so that we can come out of this with a better relationship with people. each other, okay? And thank you. I hate to leave, but I have to rush all the way to North Dallas, so I need to be there. I got to figure out a way to drive 45 minutes within 30 minutes, so.
Oh, Lord.
See how, if I get stopped, can I, give a good name?
That's you up front. That's traffic right there.
All right. Thank you again.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. And thank you for coming out tonight for this important conversation. For those I haven't met, my name is Casey Thomas. I represent Dallas City Council District 3. I've had the pleasure of representing District 3 for almost 8 years now. I have a few months left of my term, but we still got a lot of work to get done, so I will be running through the finish line until I pass the torch on to whoever is elected by the residents of District 3. But when Tanya called me, I immediately said, absolutely, I definitely want to co-host for a number of reasons. One, it was either the day before or the day of the funeral. And so it was televised on CNN. I don't know how many of you watched it. It was really, really something else. And Reverend Al Sharpton, as he normally does, did a magnificent job of not only eulogizing his life, but incorporating the importance of not allowing anything in this nation to happen again, and the need for whatever policies at a federal level to be changed. I had the pleasure and honor of being Mayor Pro Tem of the city of Dallas when Bolton John was murdered. That was a difficult day. I remember watching the news the night before and hearing about someone who was killed in their apartment. And didn't know the details, didn't know if it was a man, didn't know anything, but the next morning, early the next morning, I called Mayor Rollins. And he had just gotten off the phone with Chief Hall. And I said, how bad is it? He said, it's bad, it's really, really bad. I said, well, tell me. He said it was African-American male who was in his apartment. He was killed by a white female officer. I said, I don't know how much worse it can get than that. And so, probably one of the most difficult, but when you're in leadership, you have to you have to do courageous things. One of the most difficult conversations I had was, I had Chief Hall come to my office. And I encouraged her, based on everything I had been hearing, and to take the action necessary as soon as possible to terminate the office. And I understand, protocol within the police department, things of that nature. And so just being in that position at that time was very challenging. And then seeing the video, and I recorded it. I didn't even watch the whole thing. I recorded it. I haven't even gone back and watched it, and my security is in the back. And because it's a school night, we may have to get out of here a little earlier than I had planned. But I didn't even want them to see it. We talked about it. We talked about all kind of things. There are African American males, they're teenagers. My oldest son is 16, and someday soon he'll get his driver's license. And everybody out there, y'all be careful. Be on the lookout for him. But he'll be driving. And his younger brother is 13, and soon he'll be in the same position, have an opportunity to get his license and drive it. And in terms of having to talk, I mean, we not only have to talk one time, we have to talk several times. Because I want to make sure that they are aware, of the dangers that come with, just being a driver, and then the danger that comes with also knowing how, and the perception of certain movements and things of that nature, and how it can be interpreted. So I want to make sure they're aware of those things. And I told them I definitely wanted them to be here tonight because of this important topic. And so this is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for the community to heal. A lot of people were really, really impacted. Now, me personally was impacted when I first heard about it, less known, seeing some of the video of what took place and the fact that these were African-American officers. In the past, we have a lot of these type of situations and circumstances. There's a white officer, officer of color, but in this case, these were African-American males who did this to another African-American male. And, you know, there's a lot of rumors and speculation that they knew each other and that there was something about past relationships or whatever the case may be. But we're gonna let the court of law decide those things. We're gonna allow those facts to come out. Bless you, brother. And, but tonight, and also March 2nd, because this is a two-part series, tonight is about us. It's about us having the opportunity to heal, having the opportunity to process exactly what took place, and then most importantly, what actions and what things can we do to make sure, as Tanya said, that we don't have that type of situation that happened here in the city of Dallas. So I'm glad we have my friends. I know both of these gentlemen very well. Spent a lot of time with both of them because I think it's important for council members and leadership within the police department to have a relationship. It's important for the police and the community to have a relationship. You know, one of the reasons, and then I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna take my seat. One of the reasons that we didn't have protests and riots and demonstrations all across the country was because Tyrese's mother and his family said because the chief and because the DA acted so quickly to fire those officers and to charge those officers, because at the end of the day, whenever we've seen protests, it's been because of how long it took for some type of action to take place. Because they moved so quickly, the family said, we don't want, when the video comes out, please don't destroy your own neighborhoods or communities. And it could have very easily been protests, not only in Memphis, but all across this country, could have been on fire. But because of the respect that they had for the family, because at the end of the day, they were the ones who were hurting more than any of us. We empathize with them, but they actually were the ones who suffered from what happened to their son and their relative. And I don't know how many people have taken the time to really think about the amount of damage that could have happened, the amount of millions of dollars in damages that could have occurred if that family didn't say, you know what, if you want to have vigil, please do that. But we're asking, please don't go out and destroy your own communities. And because of that, it did not happen. And that shows when you have a courageous, spiritual, because they are spiritual family, what can happen. And also, when law enforcement takes actions to discipline their own, then we see how peace can begin to take place, and the next step is justice. So I want to thank everyone for coming out, and please, let's be frank, let's be honest, let's be transparent, let's make sure that we get value from the time that we spend here tonight. Thank you.